strain. Was it a bicycle? What is wrong with my brain? Is it the end of me? No, I must still believe. So I'm still in love, you see. Heck yeah, now I'm on my way. But let's stay focused, there's still a job in hand that we must do. Cameras start to click, we know what create is something new. So go Marty and Sarah and Mark and Matt, Owen, Smitty, McGrilly and Jamie Lane in the Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. Stop the clock, we're done, we're rolling. Sound the horn and sing that we are going. 27 hours, that is the time. So let's hop on the bus and let it shine, 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 shine. Say sha la 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 la, 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 sha la 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 la.
Good afternoon, folks. You are very welcome to Bandido Talks. And of course, today, folks, I thought it would be time to bring back a bit of Bandido's beef. You know, we haven't got into a good back and forth here on the show in a few weeks. I think the last time we did a Bandido's beef was Deadwood, the movie. I would encourage you to check out that show. That was a good episode. It was a long one. I can't imagine today's show, today's Bandido's beef, is going to go on quite as long as that one, but you never know. When the Bandido gets the engine up and running, you know, I always say this, folks. I always say, you know, I think today's show is not going to take that long. I always say, oh, we'll motor through the show rightly, won't we? 2 hours later, the beef is still ongoing. The score has not yet been settled. But I do think today, folks, today's Bandido's beef, it should be a straightforward one to break down. And I want to explain where I even got the idea for this show. Of course, what is the Bandido's beef today? Well, he has a beef with the vegans. You know, we've touched lightly on diet and all of this sort of stuff. We did a little mind stream a few weeks ago where we talked about what an ancestral diet looked like throughout the ages, trying to figure out what it is that would represent something similar to what our ancestors would have eaten throughout their natural history. We did a little mind stream on that, so we've touched on the idea of food here on the show. But you see, the vegans, folks, the vegans are very sure, they're very sure that everybody has no need to be consuming animal products. They should not be wearing animal products. They should not support any industry that is exploiting the animals. Well, you know, folks, it's been a long time since I've really been in the diet sphere, the vegan sphere, the plant-based sphere, the carnivore diet sphere. You know, all of this stuff. Because it mostly centers around diet. I know the vegans say they don't want to wear animal products. That's true. And, you know, they don't want to be involved in any process that has revolved around exploiting animals. I understand that. But most of the time, folks, when we think of vegans, we are thinking about the idea of not consuming animal products. It normally ends up at diet. That's where most of these discussions with vegans center upon. We've got the meat eaters over here who don't want to hear any of that. Then we've got the vegans over here telling the meat eaters that they don't understand. If they just saw the videos of the pigs in the gas chambers, if they just saw the videos of the hens and all these atrocious things that happen to the animals on these factory farms. If only you could see what I've seen. This is what the vegans will say. I will give you irrefutable evidence that will change your mind. And of course, it never changes the minds of the meat eaters. It just makes them dig their trench further. And in fact, folks, upon observing vegans, and before we really get into the nuts and bolts of this, I do need to make something clear, because there will be some people who perhaps will watch this, and they'll say, but why are you generalizing? You're generalizing. Not all vegans go on the way that you're going to describe. I know that. Today's show is going to revolve around generalizations. That is true. I understand that not every single vegan on the planet is going to be representative of what it is that I'm going to talk about on the show today. So yes, the Bandido is going to generalize. That is true. Get over it. If you're not happy about it, watch something else. Okay. Now, the vegans, folks. How did the vegans get back into the Bandido's mind? Because the Bandido doesn't really live in that space. It's not a space that he lives in. But the good old algorithm. The algorithm clearly has picked up on a little tendency with the Bandido. It must have realized somehow the Bandido is interested broadly in living a health-promoting existence, doing some exercise, getting out into nature. Maybe the algorithm has thought, if I throw a good old vegan debate the direction of the Bandido, maybe we'll be able to squeeze a bit of content out of the Bandido. And the algorithm was correct. One could argue, it knows me too well. It knows me too well because the algorithm threw a debate my direction. Folks, I think we are familiar with these debates. You know these Jubilee debates where it's one person against 20 other people who oppose them? You know those debates, the Jubilee debates? Well, one of these came up on my feed recently, in the last, I would say 2 weeks. And it planted the seed for this show. And it was one vegan against 20 meat eaters or 20 non-vegans or something like that. I think it was 20 meat eaters. And so we have this one vegan in the chair defending veganism, bringing up points of view, saying why these other people think it's justifiable to consume animal products, to exploit animals, etc., etc. So I think I watched about 10 minutes of this debate. I think it went on for almost 2 hours. I watched 10 minutes, and I couldn't really watch any more. I watched 10 minutes and thought, holy Christ, this is hard work. This is hard work. And then I thought, you know what? Instead of me watching this entire debate, how about I watch 10 minutes and I do a show on it? That seems like a fair trade. So I sort of thought about doing the show about 2 weeks ago. I just haven't got around to it. We had to talk about Sir Keir last week. You know, poor old Sir Keir. He looks like he's going to get the heave-ho. But we're not going to get into that. Check out last week's show if you want to know what I'm referring to. But anyway, the seed was planted a few weeks ago, and here we are, folks. And I've got a beef with the vegans. Because during this Jubilee debate, this 10-minute segment that I watched, you know who pissed me off the most? It wasn't the 20 meat eaters. It was the fucking vegan. The vegan pissed me off. And this tends to happen with me. Look, do I think some of the carnivore people have retarded logic? Yes, they do. We talked about this in the Mind stream a few weeks ago. Check out the channel. Go look at our Mind streams. We have an episode talking about what you should eat, something like that. And the carnivore people are also not immune from a critical analysis, because they do talk bollocks as well. And it's just broadly applicable to meat eaters. Meat eaters do love to dig their trenches also. And there can be no talking to them. But it's different. Maybe someday I'll do a show on meat eaters or carnivore people. People who really advocate for an enormous consumption of meat. Maybe I'll do a show on them. But today it's about the vegans. But honestly, folks, the carnivore people, even though they do have retarded logic at times, it's interesting because they don't piss me off as much as the vegans. And that's what we're going to explore today on the show. This vegan on this Jubilee debate pissed me off to the point where I couldn't even watch beyond 10 minutes. And we're going to talk about why this dude pissed me off and why vegans broadly piss me off. Because we're going to hone in on 2 things that vegans tend to do. There are 2 things that vegans resort to when they are explaining how passionate they are about veganism. You know the way we all have passions, folks? There's nothing wrong with being passionate about anything. Good for you. If you're passionate about something, fantastic. That probably means you've a shit ton of motivation to do something. And you know, motivation is unpredictable. But if you're super passionate about something, you ain't going to be short on motivation. So good for you. We are all passionate, we could say, about different things. Or certain people at least are passionate about certain things. Nothing wrong with a bit of passion. But there's something that the vegans do. These 2 things that vegans do that not only piss me off, that not only make me have a beef with them, but sort of ironically, these 2 things that vegans do frequently when they are telling us all about how passionate they are about veganism and the animals, these 2 things actually make their message less effective. It's a sort of self-destructive kind of behaviour. Here they are, engaging in these two things that we're going to talk about, thinking that they're actually doing good by their message, thinking that they're actually enhancing their message by doing these two things, when in reality, they're actually hurting their message. Because if the vegans are so hell-bent on getting everybody in the world to understand how important it is to get your calories exclusively from plants, how important it is that we don't engage in practices that exploit animals. If the vegans are so passionate and interested in other people becoming like them, you would think they would choose a strategy that's going to be most optimal for convincing other people to do what it is that they are doing. You would think that would make sense. If you're really interested in changing the world, turning everybody into a vegan, you would think that you would critically analyze your approach and say, you know what? I don't care about what I want to say or do. It's not about what I want to say and do. It's more about what is most effective. What are the most effective things to say? What are the most effective things to do? Two different ways of looking at it, folks. Yes, there are certain things in life. We all perhaps want to say and do certain things. Say certain things to certain people. Do certain things in life. But then when we analyze critically what it is that we're about to do based on our desires, based on our wants, we may actually arrive at an interesting conclusion, and we may realize, well, hold on. Perhaps what I want to do is not actually the most effective thing to do. And so you reanalyze your approach, and you start to, in a sense, make concessions to yourself. You may want to say this, you may want to do this, but if I'm really that interested in educating the world and helping people understand the truth, I would be better doing it this way, because this way is more effective. And I find this remarkable with the vegans. The vegans literally act on desire, we could say, on impulse almost, on wanting to say and wanting to do things that just appeal to themselves. But is that really the most effective way to go about diffusing your message out into the world? Is that really going to capture the masses and get the masses to buy into your message? I would argue not. And hopefully by the end of the show, we're all going to realize these are two traps, we could say. These two things that vegans do habitually, they are traps. They are traps that passionate people can fall into. People who really care about something are most susceptible to falling into these traps, we could say. And the vegans, because they are very passionate about the animals, not killing the animals, not having them slaughtered in an inhumane way, not having them exploited, the vegans let their emotions, we could say, cloud their judgment. And once the emotions cloud their judgment, they start acting on what they want to do, what their desire is pushing them to do. And you know, that can land you in a funny place, folks. And the funny place in which it can land you is, yeah, sure, you're telling a whole bunch of people about veganism, but are you doing it in a way that's most effective? Or are you actually, in a sort of counterproductive kind of way, shooting yourself in the foot? And that is what I see vegans do frequently. They take their gun out of their holster and shoot themselves in the foot. And that only makes them angrier and more aggressive. So, okay. Let's get into these two things that vegans do. These two kinds of behaviour. These two traps. let's have a look at trap number 1. The first thing that I see vegans do, that I have to be honest, this first thing pisses me off, number 1, but also it actually hurts their own message when it comes to getting more people, getting more of the average person or people within the population to buy into the narrative that they're selling. The first thing that vegans do is they take the moral high ground. They take the moral high ground. Folks, if you really want to piss someone off in life, you know a great way to do that. A great way to really piss someone off. A great way to get someone not to listen to what you're saying, but to just have the red mist descend and have them get into an extremely defensive, argumentative state. A great way to get someone into that state is for you to take the moral high ground. What happens when you take the moral high ground? Well, whether you realize it or not, folks, when you take the moral high ground, you position yourself here and you position everybody else here. So everybody else is down here and you're up here. And you know what you're doing? You're looking down your nose at everyone. And when everybody looks up to you, all they can see is you looking down your nose at them. In other words, what are you signaling to people when you take the moral high ground? What you are signaling is, I'm better than you. I'm morally superior to you. I have more conscientiousness than you. Fundamentally, I'm better than you as a person. My character is made of sterner stuff than your character. Now, folks, how do you think someone is going to react to you if that is the stance that you take? If you take a position whereby you're up here, looking down your nose at people and signaling that you're better than them, that you're morally superior to them, that you're more righteous, that you're a better person, that you're more empathetic. We could keep going, folks. When you start signaling superiority morally to other people, that gets people really pissed off. And the vegans are superb at doing this. The vegans are just great at positioning themselves above everybody else, looking down their noses, and basically viewing people like shit on their shoe. Now, I understand. Some vegans this may not be their intention. They may not be intentionally doing this, but this is the end result of their actions and their words. And so, folks, when I looked at this dude who was debating these 20 meat eaters during this Jubilee debate, within 20 seconds, I just looked at the dude. He hadn't really said anything yet. I just looked at him. And he was sitting back like Lord Schmuck. I have the universe figured out. Yeah, I'm your moral superior. Come debate me. He was sitting there, oh so cool. His moral standards just so much higher than everybody else's in the room. Yeah, you peasant meat eater, you come and give me 5 minutes of your time. Yeah. I've it all worked out. I've arrived at the promised land. That's the vibe he gave me. And instantly, he became unlikable. Now, some people are going to disagree with me. Some people will look at the Jubilee debate with this vegan dude and think he was great. He was very knowledgeable and he was spitting facts and he knew his apples from his onions. All right. To me, he came across as taking the moral high ground. He placed himself above everybody else in the room. He wasn't debating at their level. He essentially saw himself as better than everybody else. He didn't say that, but that is the vibe. It was a very strong impression that he was giving me, and it made me instantly dislike him. Before he had even said anything, just a first impression. It made me dislike him. It felt like he was debating, looking down his nose at the other people. And folks, consequently, how do you think the debate evolved? For the 10 minutes that I was watching it, it was hostile. You know, and you might say, oh, well, that's the way the Jubilee sets it up. The Jubilee sets these debates up so that they are hostile, so that they can clip out little parts of the debate, throw them out onto social media and get people to watch the longer video. I'm sure there is a bit of that. But from the 10 minutes that I saw, the dynamic between the vegan and the meat eaters was hostile. Right from the get-go. Hostility. What is there to learn, folks, when you set up a hostile dynamic? What's there actually to learn there? This vegan dude looked like he had already put his flag in the ground. He already had his conclusions about the world, about veganism, about meat eaters. He looked like he was arriving there with as closed a mind as you could imagine. And that's what I mean. He was already entering the debate smug and arrogant. That's, again, whether he was or not, that's the impression he gave me. Smug, arrogant, morally superior. What do you expect to happen when you get into a debate with that sort of an attitude, with that sort of a posture? How is anything productive going to come out of a debate? Because the meat eaters, they're already, these people aren't, say what you want, but humans are pretty good at picking up on basic body language. All the people would have known that this was a hostile setup. And it's unproductive. And that's why I lost interest after 10 minutes. Because I'm watching this vegan dude. He has precisely zero openness. He's not really listening to the meat-eating people. He keeps interrupting them. He keeps talking over them. And he sits back like the king of the mountain, as if he is their superior somehow on this imaginary moral plane. So folks, that is no way to engage people. If you're actually interested, if you're genuinely interested in getting the vegan message out there, the last thing you want to do is come across as unlikable. You're actually shooting your own credibility in the foot. Now look, I'm sure a bunch of vegans watched this and got down into the comments section and went, oh yeah, he slayed the meat eaters. Oh, you see the facts that he was spitting? Oh, it was just, and then they're on boners in the comments section. Or the women, they're down in the comments section wet, looking at this dude. Spit the facts. So we've got a bunch of vegans, probably, down in the comments section, either on a boner or wet, as they view this dude, their figurehead, giving it the big one to these meat-eating people. Bollocks, folks. I'm not interested in that. All that vegan dude looked like he was there to do was to try and hammer these meat-eating folk into the ground. It didn't look like he came into the debate with an open mind. Curious to see what other people would say. Curious to see if he himself has overlooked something in his own worldview, in his own approach. He looked like he was just a closed book. He was there to preach, to talk over everyone else, to preach, and ram down everybody else's throat. Which brings me on to point number 2. Speaking of ramming things down people's throat. Because not only do the vegans, instantly, a whole bunch of them, they take a position of moral superiority, looking down their noses at other people. Basically sitting like a yogi on the top of the mountain, like they have life sussed out. They are just morally superior, more conscientious, better humans. Not only do vegans tend to take that approach when they are talking about veganism, but they do a second thing, folks, which is they force their worldview onto other people. Force! Folks, let me tell you something. I'm going to give you an example of where this has actually happened to me in real life, of someone forcing their worldview, what they think is right for me, down my throat. Let me give you an example. So last year, I was out in Lanzarote for a few weeks, escaping the Irish winter. A fine little excursion it was. Nice and warm out in Lanzarote. Really enjoyed that. Now, while I was walking up and down the coastal strip, where you've got all these little restaurants, basically, and shops, but mostly restaurants. So as you're walking along this little coastal boardwalk, this little coastal strip, you have all of these different restaurants, and it's a hive of activity. You can only imagine, tourists galore, people walking up and down, people love to eat out, so everybody's trying to figure out, oh well, what restaurant should we go to tonight? Now, something very interesting happened to me last year when I was out in Lanzarote. So I was walking along this coastal strip with all of these restaurants. And I was approaching this restaurant. And there was this dude outside the restaurant. And he had the restaurant's logo on his shirt. But I want you to imagine the restaurant is here. I want you to imagine, here's the walkway, and then you've got the sea over here. So I'm walking along the walkway, and this dude isn't inside the restaurant. He's out on the walkway, in the middle of the walkway. So the restaurant's over here. He's not inside the restaurant doing, cooking or being a waiter or, guiding people into the restaurant from within, showing them what to do, giving them menus. No, he was actually out in the middle of the walkway. And I could see this up ahead. I was thinking, why is this dude out in the middle of the walkway? And so I approach him because I was suspicious. I thought to myself, I wonder, is this guy poaching? Poaching meaning what I'm about to explain to you right now. So I walk up, and the walkway isn't that wide, folks. It's pretty narrow and pretty congested. And so I walk up by him. And as I'm just approaching him, of course I'm wearing my red bandana, so I stick out a little bit from the crowd. And all of a sudden he turns into me, and he's holding a menu, and he starts going, "Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. Would you like to come in and eat? I think we've got the right food for you. You look like someone who would enjoy eating in our restaurant. Would you like to come in? We've got seafood. We've got meat. We've got vegetable dishes. I think you would really..." This dude, I didn't ask him anything. I didn't engage him. I didn't want to talk to him. But as I walked past him, he turned into me and he started to force down my throat what he thought was best for me. And of course, in this case, he thought that the thing that was best for me in that moment was to just turn on a dime and go into his restaurant and start eating some noodles and have a ribeye steak. That's what he thought. And notice, folks, what he did. And then he was talking very quickly. He had very good English. He was talking very quickly. And I was trying to get a word in. I was like, no, sir, I'm not out to eat. I'm just out for a walk. Oh, but I'm sure you would really enjoy coming in here. How about, we take you in and we show you a little bit of the menu. And I'm like, whoa, I'm fine. I'm out for a walk. I don't want food. But are you sure, sir? Are you sure? Because you look like you're in good shape. You look like we could feed you. He goes back for thirds. This is the thing, folks. In life, when someone tries to force their worldview or what they think is best for you down your throat, that is a red flag, and quite a big one. Because if this dude's restaurant was so good, if it was just so good and so marvellous, and the noodles and the ribeye and the vegetable dishes were just so outstanding, then he wouldn't need to be out in the middle of the walkway trying to convince me of all of this, would he now? Word of mouth would travel quickly. People would know how great this restaurant was. And it was funny, folks, because you see, whenever I turned around and looked inside the restaurant, how many people do you think were in eating? That's right, precisely 0. So I'm looking at all of these other restaurants. They are filling up nicely. Some of them are quite full already. This dude's restaurant is fucking empty. Ghost town in there. The waiters and the chefs are flicking noodles and beans at one another to entertain themselves. They look bored out of their bollocks. And this is one of the things I use, folks. When I'm listening to someone, not only am I on the lookout for someone taking the moral high ground, but I'm also on the lookout to see how aggressively and how much force is someone using to try and convince me of something. Because the more force and the more aggression that someone uses to try and convince me, the more suspicious I become of what it is that they are trying to sell me. Because if the idea is so good, if it stands upon incredibly solid foundations, then the idea, the proposal, will speak for itself. It doesn't need you forcing it down my throat. Does it now? And this is a classic trap that the vegans fall into. How often, folks, do you trust someone who is giving you a very hard sell? If you encounter a salesman or some sort of a fucking waiter / salesman that I encountered out in Lanzarote, and they basically borderline harass you, they're very invasive, they're in your personal space, they are making assumptions about what you want, they're trying to force their worldview down your throat. How open do you feel to listening to that person's message when they treat you like that? It creates instantaneous suspicion. The first thing that I think, when someone behaves like that with me, the first impression that I generate is, this person must be selling me a bag of shite. Like, they honestly must be. Now, it may turn out that they are selling something better than a bag of shite. But first impressions, folks, if you're having to sell that hard, you, if we're talking probabilities, must be holding a bag of shite that you're trying to offload. And this is what the vegans do. The vegans try to force their worldview onto everyone. And it's so counterproductive. It's bananas. Bananas in fucking pajamas. How counterproductive this is. Think of it even more basic, folks. When you try to tell a child not to do something, and you really aggressively try to tell them, you shouldn't do that, don't do that, you try to force this idea upon the child not to do something, what does this encourage the child to do? I mean, if you really want to get your child to do something, what should you do? You should tell them not to do it. In other words, you should try to force a worldview upon them, because the child, in terms of probabilities, is quite likely to flip. Their curiosity will probably have them flip. They'll hear someone telling them not to do something, and it actually makes them more emboldened to do it. How often have parents ran into this obstacle? They really try to force their children to do stuff, and it feels like they're whacking their head against the wall. Well, all they're doing is stoking the kids' curiosity. Now, in a vegan sense, if vegans try to force down your throat why you shouldn't be eating meat, why you shouldn't be buying products that are, responsible for the exploitation of animals, why you shouldn't support any animal industry. If you start to aggressively force that down people's throats, people will be curious as to why you're being so aggressive. If veganism is such a good idea, then the idea of veganism will speak for itself. You don't need to force it down anybody's throat. Not in the modern age. No need to do that. If veganism's such a good idea, then put it out into the open marketplace and allow people to decipher for themselves if the idea is so good. But you see, whenever you get very aggressive, folks, very aggressive, and you're trying to force this vegan narrative down people's throats, it makes them suspicious about what it is that you're selling them and what it is that you're trying to convince them of. And so, folks, when we couple these two behaviours together, taking the moral high ground, which is a great way to instantaneously piss off the person that you're talking to, and then force a narrative down this now pissed off person's throat, which will only make them more suspicious of you. They're already pissed off at you because you're looking down your nose at them. You're claiming to be their moral superior. So not only are they now pissed off, but they're also super suspicious because you're trying to sell them too hard on what it is that you believe is right. Folks, that's my beef with the vegans. The vegans seem to be acting from a place of emotions clouding judgment and allowing their visceral desire and wants to take over. This isn't an effective way to go about diffusing your message of veganism. Of course it isn't. If you are hell-bent on acquiring more people from the masses, now look, obviously, this type of moral superiority and aggressive stance will work for some people. But folks, if the vegans are really interested in capturing the masses, that's no way to talk to the masses. The average person is not going to be having any of that. The average person will get pissed off that the vegan is acting like their moral superior, and then they will get suspicious as to why they are forcing this vegan education down their throat. Let me be your teacher. You see, average peon, average peasant in the population, you see, you just don't understand. You see, you just don't understand. You haven't seen the videos I've seen. You haven't read the studies I've studied. You're just not educated. Let me step in as your moral superior and force my education down your throat because you're just a dipshit. You're just an immoral dipshit. You've no compassion for the animals. Let me, as your moral superior, as your moral teacher, let me instill a bit of morality into you. Let me instill a bit of education into you because you just don't understand. Ah, poor soul. The poor soul doesn't understand. Allow me to educate you. Allow me to force the truth as I see it down your throat. Yeah, that's going to work, folks, because that is how vegans come across. That's how they come across, whether they intend to or not. And it hurts their message. It hurts it. If we're talking about appealing to the masses, it completely hurts that message that is destined, supposedly, for the masses. That sort of a message, that sort of a strategy is only going to capture a niche audience. It's only going to capture a small number of people in the population. Similarly aggressive and similarly morally superior people, of course, will resonate with that message. Yeah. You're going to attract like for like, basically. But that's not what the vegans tell us. The vegans tell us that they want the whole world to get on board with veganism. Well, they sure as fuck aren't going about the most effective way of doing that. And so what can we learn here, folks? Well, look, it's quite simple what we can learn here. We can look at these traps that the vegans fall into and essentially learn how we can best manage our passion in life. As I said at the beginning, passion's great. Isn't it wonderful to know what it is that you want in life? Isn't it wonderful to have so much energy and so much enthusiasm for something in life? Terrific. How is it, though, that we can channel this enthusiasm so that we don't turn people away from us, so that we don't piss people off, so that we don't give people a negative first impression of us? Well, here's how you do it. So instead of taking the moral high ground, presenting yourself as holier than thou, as a moral superior to everyone else, like you've got life sussed out, like you're just so much more conscientious than everybody else, instead of doing that and instead of forcing what it is that you want people to believe down their throats, here's what you do. And some of you aren't going to like this because you're going to say it's too slow. We need action. We need to protect the animals now. Animals are being slaughtered every second that we're speaking. You're not going to probably like this. But the way, folks, that you channel your passion in life, the way that you channel your enthusiasm in a way so that people actually admire what it is you're doing, so that people are actually interested in what it is that you're doing, so that people don't barf at what you're doing. You know how you do that? You know how you get those reactions? You demonstrate through your actions. You lead by example. You let your actions tell the story. You don't try to convince anyone. You don't try to take a morally superior position. You don't try to ram information down people's throats. You don't try to educate them. Let me repeat, you don't try to educate them. What you do is that you demonstrate, you show through your actions what it is that you do. And you leave it at that. That's it. No more. You don't try to educate people. You don't try to tell them where they're not understanding the mechanics of the world. You don't try to, make people feel less conscientious. You know the thumbnail there? Weak men eat meat and angry women eat meat. No, you don't try to attack people's characters. You don't assassinate their characters based on their food choices. No, you don't do that. What you do is you walk out into the world and you lead by example. Simple. But you see, you leave it at that. You don't try to overcomplicate things. You don't try to save the world. You don't go out with an agenda that arouses suspicion. Because the vegans arouse suspicion. The way they go about talking about veganism, it arouses suspicion. It puts them in a negative light. People don't want to listen to them. How do you avoid that? Speak through your actions. Not through your mouth. Speak through your actions. And you strap your seatbelt in for the long haul. You get ready to walk a long path. You get ready to embark upon a long journey. This is going to take time. But what I can assure you is that if you lead through your actions, if you speak through your actions, if you're a living example of what it is that you would like to preach to people, but you don't preach to people, if you're just the living example, do you know what happens, folks? It's very interesting. You stoke people's curiosity. That's your asset, folks. That is how you go about channeling your passion, your enthusiasm. What you want to do is you want to stimulate people's curiosity in a positive way, not in a negative way, whereby their curiosity leads them to being suspicious of you. You want to stoke their curiosity in a positive way. How do you stoke curiosity in a positive way? Let me tell you how. When you think, folks, of a really well put together trailer for a movie, what is a trailer for a movie trying to get you to do? It's ultimately trying to get you to go to the cinema to watch the movie or to download the movie on a streaming platform or watch it on a streaming platform. The end goal of the trailer is to try and direct you towards the full-length movie. Trailers will only last for what, 2 minutes? 1 minute? The whole point of a trailer is to stoke your curiosity. It's supposed to present parts of the movie in a specific sequence that fires quickly so that your curiosity is ignited, which will then hopefully lead to you going to watch the full 2-hour, 3-hour movie. Folks, if you're passionate about something, you want to initially present yourself in the way that a director presents a movie trailer. What the vegans do is, the vegans try to force the 3-hour movie onto people in one sitting. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Too much. Not having that. Imagine imagine you're walking down the street and I just pull you aside and say, come on, I want you to come in here and watch my 3-hour movie. People would be like, what reason do I have to watch your movie? Who are you? What are your credentials? Can I see a trailer for your movie? Like, before I commit to a 3-hour movie, which could end up being a waste of time, do you have any, I don't know, do you have a trailer? Do you have a 10-minute segment of your movie? so that I could sample it? Can I find out who you are first? Folks, you need to stoke people's curiosity. And how you stoke curiosity is through strategically withholding information. It's through the act of withholding information that makes people curious. It's this act of not literally giving them everything. That's what a movie trailer does. It gives you parts of the movie. It gives you enough to get you interested, to ignite your curiosity, so that you then devote more of your time to consuming the full piece of art. The vegans don't understand this. You need to have some mysticism surrounding your message. That's the key. Mysticism is a way to ignite people's curiosity. We could think of it a different way. Withholding information strategically is another way to stoke people's curiosity. If you really, folks, want to convince people of things, if you really want people to engage with your worldview, you need to have some mysticism surrounding it. You can't just give them everything. You can't just vomit all the information out onto a platter. You have to withhold a bit. You have to edit your speech. You have to edit your message. Edit your message in a way whereby you're giving just enough, but you're not preaching. You're not trying to educate people. And when you lead through your actions, not your words, when you lead through your actions, you are doing the equivalent thing to what a movie director does with a trailer. When you just allow your message to be viewed through your actions, you're not trying to tell people what to do. You're not positioning yourself above people. You leave openness. You leave ambiguity. There's nothing quite, folks, like a bit of mysticism, ambiguity, the strategic withholding of information. There's nothing quite like those things to get people interested. That's what you should use. If you're really interested in people understanding what it is that you have to say in the world, you need to leave a bit of ambiguity, a bit of mysticism surrounding your message. Openness. Notice how we can use a whole bunch of different words, folks, to say the same thing. If you leave more openness in your message, some wriggle room to maneuver. What do the vegans do? No, it's veganism. You shouldn't be exploiting the animals. You shouldn't be eating animal products. You're morally compromised. You're not an admirable human. You're down here. I'm up here. I'm your moral superior. You need educated. You're misinformed. Let me show you the videos. Once I show you the videos, you'll understand. You'll see it the way I see it. Where is the ambiguity there, folks? Where is the mysticism? Where's the strategic withholding of information? Where is the openness? Where is the wriggle room in that message? There is none. You are presenting a concrete view with no wriggle room. You are bringing something before the population, and you are signaling to the population that no matter what it is that they say, they are wrong and you are right, because you're already bringing a pre-formed worldview that has no openness in it. And the people, upon your presentation of this worldview, people will have no sense of ambiguity. There will be nothing to draw them in. You've just vomited the worldview in a very aggressive, forceful way, while looking down your nose at the people at whom you're vomiting the information. That is what we can learn here, folks. The big lesson is passion's good. Enthusiasm is good. No problem. It's all about how to channel it so that you don't turn people away. And the way in which you do that is you lead through your actions. Don't educate people. Don't preach to people. Don't force information down people's throats. And for fuck's sake, do not take a position of moral superiority over everyone else. Don't go to the moral high ground. Simply lead, present through your actions. And when you present through your actions, that will be you sending a movie trailer out into the universe. And if you are competent enough, if you live an existence that's highly competent and your actions are competent, then you know what? A funny thing will happen. People will actually come to you looking for more information. You won't have to go to them. Notice what the vegans do. The vegans have this arse ways about. The vegans are going to the people. Just like that dude at the restaurant in Lanzarote. I didn't engage him. I didn't want to talk to him. He came to me and forced his worldview down my throat. That's what the vegans do. The vegans go in search of people to educate. Arse ways about. What you want to do is you want the people coming to you. How do you get the people to come to you? You need some mysticism surrounding your message. You need some ambiguity. You need some openness. You need some wriggle room. You need some of the information to be withheld so that people don't fully understand what it is you're doing. They have an idea what you're doing, but they don't fully understand it. Your actions are suggesting that you're doing something, but they aren't conclusive. They aren't set in stone. And whenever you give that impression out to people, people's curiosity gets stoked in a positive way. People want to understand what it is that you're doing. They seek you. Instead, you don't have to seek them out. They seek you. They want you. They actually come to you and say, could you tell me a little bit more about what you're doing? Because, I've seen you online, or, I've seen you out in the local park there, and, I've seen you doing your exercises, and, you look like you know a thing or two about exercises, but, you kind of go about it in a way where you're not trying to, flaunt what it is you're doing, but I'm kind of curious. What do you do? I saw your content online. You were talking about this thing, and, I saw your video when you were doing this. And, I'd like to know, how did you learn how to play the guitar so well? How did you learn how to do those exercises so well? When you stoke curiosity through your actions, you don't have to go looking for people. The people come looking for you. And the vegans do not seem to understand this concept. The vegans have it arseways about. They go looking for people to convince, instead of convincing people to come looking for them. That's the trick. And how do you convince people to come looking for you? Lead through your actions, not your words. Don't educate people. Don't force information down their throat. Don't take the moral high ground. Just let your actions perform the function that a movie trailer functions for a movie. Give them enough. Give them enough so that they're interested. But don't educate them. Don't tell them what to do. Don't point out the flaws in what it is they're doing. And when you maintain that little bit of mysticism, that little bit of ambiguity, that little bit of uncertainty about how it is that you're doing what it is that you're doing, that openness to possibilities, that wriggle room for explanations as to how it is you're doing what you're doing, that's how you hook people in. All right, folks. So that's the Bandido's beef with the vegans. The vegans are basically, a whole bunch of them are dipshits. They shoot themselves in the foot. Their approach is counterproductive. They're actually hurting their own message more than what they think. So be it. Such is life. Let's have a look in the live chat. Is there anybody in the live chat? Doesn't look like there's anybody in the live chat, folks. I told you today's show would be snappier. It wasn't like our show with Deadwood. The last Bandido's beef went on for over 2 hours. It was a long show. But today, 1 hour and 8 minutes. The Bandido was snappy today. Folks, if you enjoyed what you were listening to, hit the thumbs up button. Hit the thumbs down button if you're a really pissed off vegan listening to this. The choice, the decision is in your hands. And of course, get down into the comments section. Let me know what you thought about the show. Do you agree or disagree? Partly disagree? Let me know down in the comments. And then finally, folks, if you like in general what we do here at Bandido Talks, if you find it interesting, insightful, valuable, or useful in some way, then feel free to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, folks. We are live every week in studio. If you want to call this a studio, it's a little homemade studio, folks. The Bandido likes to improvise with what he has. He's a simple man. Simple man is the Bandido. So, if you like what you hear on the channel, feel free to subscribe. Live every week in our little homemade studio. You're going to have to subscribe, though, to get notified when we have an upcoming live show. The Bandido, as you can see on the scrolling red banner above, showtime takes place on Universal Bandido Time. UBT. The Bandido does his live shows when he feels like it, so you'll have to subscribe to get notified. Also, folks, we are live over on Rumble. We do completely different live shows over on Rumble. It's more political normally. It's more US based. So head over to Rumble, use the scrolling, where is it here? The scrolling black banner below to direct yourself over to Rumble, where you can get more political or US based content. Subscribe over on Rumble, subscribe here on YouTube, follow over on X, Bandido Talks on X. Again, you can get notified of live shows if you're following over on X. But folks, that is everything from me. Hopefully Bandido's beef has got your weekend off to a good start. Nothing quite like a bit of Bandido's beef, is there now, folks? Enjoy your incoming weekend. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks. And with all of that said, it is over and out this week on YouTube, live from the Bandido.